Hello, hello, hello. This is Extreme Orange to the Extreme Exchange. Today I'm joined with my good friends from primary school, Brendan. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Extreme Exchange. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Megan and Gareth. Say hi.
Hi.
So as you'll notice, they are the first guests who are not the same age as me to be on the show, and I'm very, very excited to speak to them. So we know each other because we used to be, I used to be under their care in the Boys Brigade back in school. And they are currently still volunteering as officers there, serving and guiding the new generation of boys that join the program. So Megan is currently a student at NTU and Gareth is currently working. So thank you both so much for making the time to be here. Something that I've always been very curious about is what kind of struggles that a ministry could face, because I think everybody can agree that when you join a ministry, whether it's church, whether it's BB or some other Christian organization, there will always be problems that come up, and I guess there are the surface level, like the operational problems, like logistically we have issues and things like that. But one of the ones I wanted to focus on was manpower. So given the nature of like BV as a volunteer group, right? I think is it fair for me to say that there will inevitably be times where maybe manpower is short, or we have a surplus of people volunteering, things like that?
I think like manpower. Not to use the word manpower because it brings a different. It means something else. But I think just the struggle of having people back to serve is definitely a big thing. And I think for me it's not really like quantity, but it's more like quality. Because when you're in a volunteer organization, you struggle with trying to find people who are kind of like fully aligned with the ministry. And I think we put ourselves sometimes in an awkward situation where we actually don't really agree with, like, the person doesn't agree with what our direction is for the company, right? But we also can't ask them to leave, right? So I think that's something that I don't think I struggle with, because I can choose who I want to work with because I'm an on-the-ground officer, right? But for people like Gareth, and you're leading the company and stuff like that, I think it's definitely a challenge to find people that to get people back with the right intentions, or like sometimes when you're legit just short manpower, like you really don't have someone to lead another cohort, and then you kind of ask yourself, like, is it worth asking this person to come back or not? And every like I think for someone like Gareth, it's more like every decision that they make on whether to bring someone in or not, it really impacts the rest of the officers that he or she works with, because our team is so like we work quite closely together, like we're quite tight knit. So even if one or two people that don't really fit well in, or like don't have the right intentions, can actually really like disrupt everything else. And there's that balance that I think is a struggle in terms of like letting someone back to serve with, maybe like it's good for them as an individual but may not be good for the team, or like it's good for the team but may not be good for the individual. And then there's that balance that you have to strike as a leader, like that sensitivity to the spirit, also to know whether this is the person's season or not. It's something that I think weighs more on Gareth's shoulders than on mine. But I guess for me, when I was like recruiting, or like looking through to see which primers I wanted to ask to come back, I had to take into account a lot of like your past experience in BB, and then seeing how maybe like your previous experiences may not make you ready, or you may come back with the wrong mindset. And I didn't want I knew that certain things in the way that we work as officers, because of the past that you have experienced, would draw you away from God if you did this ministry. And then for me, that was the reason why I didn't want to ask just everyone who I thought was suitable to ask to come back. And I had to like weigh out all these things in my head, I guess, before approaching people. So I think that's like the manpower struggle on my part. Yeah, but I think Gareth definitely has a lot more struggle in this area.
No, actually, I think Megan summarized it pretty well. I think she said more than I wanted to say. Not that I want her to say less, but yeah, you put all my struggles into words. I think let me give a more theoretical answer. Because actually Megan's given you my personal answer already. The truth is, yeah, we don't have a shortage of officers. We have a shortage of committed officers.
Mm.
And like in any ministry, every ministry will always have this problem.
Mm.
And if they don't have this problem and people are all dying to sign up, then the problem becomes, as Megan said, the alignment of values.
Right.
Because very often when people want to come back and serve, uh, it's usually not
For the right reasons, is it?
yeah.
Mm.
It's very hard to explain, but the general idea is that if you're dying to come back and serve, usually not all the time, but usually most of the time it's not for the right reason.
Mm.
People usually want to come back because they want to change things, they want to change things, or they want to relive their experiences, or they want to build their kingdom, or their version of a ministry which they think is better than the one that they have been that they have gone through.
Yeah.
So it represents a big challenge for us. But speaking of which, I've heard many talked to many leaders about these kind of issues, like manpower issues, and everyone's going through the same thing. What we always say is that God will provide. I think that is true to some degree. I think this may sound a little inflammatory to say that it's not always the case. I believe that God's work done God's way will never lack God's supply. I think that was Hudson Taylor who said it, and he was a missionary who went to China. Okay, he didn't have money, he didn't have a lot of things, but the fact of the matter is that we keep thinking that everyone wants their ministry to thrive and to survive. And we think that because God is our backer, God will always supply. But if you look across history, there are so many ministries that have closed down. There are so many churches that have closed down. There have even been churches who have become mosques. Okay. So the fact of the matter is that we'll always lack manpower. Okay. And that lack is good because that lack reminds us that we must continually be dependent on Christ. And if we're not, then we just run this like organization. You know, we have a very attractive program, we have a very attractive kind of ministry, and then it's all about packaging, and then people just come, and then it no longer becomes for the right reason. I get that people don't come for the right reasons all the time, you know, but at the end of the day, I recognize that God can use ministry to change people. So it's always a balance lah. It's like Megan said lah, you know, there will never be such a thing as full alignment. And you just sometimes have to take people as they are. But if you have to remember that, as I said earlier, we tend to see our officers as shepherds. If you take in a shepherd that can cause harm, then we have a problem. Yeah, so that's why we generally, when it comes to manpower, we need to exercise a lot of discernment. We need to exercise prayer, and sometimes we need to not just pray really hard, but we have to challenge and speak to people. Although I've talked to missionaries before, and they believe that all this can be accomplished by prayer alone, and and to a large degree, that's actually true. If you're willing to pray, and if God is willing to back your ministry, then you know God will provide. Yeah.
So I guess since we're on that topic, right? We've raised, like, we've highlighted that this is an issue, or at least it's something that needs to be paid attention to. So how do y'all like practically go about trying to discern, I guess?
How to practically discern?
Yeah. I mean, if the answer is just, you know, careful prayer and speaking to them, it makes sense lah to me. Is that what y'all do?
I think for me, when I'm like what I mentioned just now, it's more it's definitely prayer, like praying that when I'm thinking through the thought process and stuff, that I remember that at the end of the day it's God's ministry lah. And when I do that, then okay, I think that happens to me a lot. Like when I make a decision, or when I make like a decision seemingly my own logic or like observation of situations around me, I will pray first lah, so that I get the alignment. I know that I myself am aligned with God before as I make those decisions, and I trust that if I'm making a wrong decision, that His Spirit will like let me know. Yeah. So I think for me, logically, it's to see what the person has experienced. And that's why I said relationship building is very important. Because when I build a relationship with the person, I know what the person is like, and I know what I'm doing, right? I know what I do in the officer's team and what an officer is meant to be like. And then I can see which person is suitable for that role or not. So I think a large part for me, at least when I'm dealing with my own cohort and who I want to ask to come back, it's a lot about knowing who they are and whether they're suitable for the role. That's a very logical answer, right? Like you ask yourself, in each situation, in each role, can they fulfill it or not? Can they fulfill it or not? Can they fulfill it or not? Or like, it also helps, I guess, when they come in, it helps us to do that, to have a relationship with them, to know what they're like. It helps us to put them in a place where they're most likely to thrive as well. Because you coming in as someone who's new to the organization and the ministry and things like that, as a leader, you must know where's the best place that will be most suited to grow in. Yeah. But I guess also asking people around, like, oh, do you think this person is suitable to come back? Generally, the more opinions that you gather, the easier it is for you to make a decision on whether the person is suitable or not. Yeah. And I think a large part of it is also whether the person's willing law. Yeah. And then just asking the person questions like, why do you want to come back and things like that. And sometimes it's revealed very easily when they haven't even thought about it before. So there's an instinct to them, right? And that's something that I will guard against though. Like they just say, oh, I just want to come back because it's like interesting, or like I just want to continue what I am now. I don't want to break out that routine. Then that's something that I'll always tell them to stop, rethink about it first before you get back to me. Yeah. So I think that it's just some things. But I mean, a lot of times also, for people who don't fully know why, it's also just interesting to give them a chance and then see what happens when they're put in a new situation. And then trust that, like what Gareth mentioned, like their character and their values are aligned. And you will know that from knowing them, no? Yeah. So that's You're muted, Gareth. Oh, he's talking to his mom.
Okay.
Gareth,
Yes.
I'll talk to my mom.
Gareth, mom, into room at 1.
Guest entrance.
In just
Okay, so I mean, okay, Gareth, do you have anything else that I'm gonna move on really?
not really lah, but if you have you heard of FAT?
That.
Yeah.
Oh
No,
yeah,
no.
that.
Yeah. So we tend to choose fat leaders lah. But mainly the thinking is mainly according to what Megan says. The standard ministry answer is to choose fat leaders. Fat leaders are faithful, available, and teachable. Yeah. So I think I mean I wouldn't go into great detail, but the general idea is that you have to be available to serve. If you every time I'm not free, then no one can use you, God can't use you, right? Then if you're not teachable, then you have your own ideas, you're stubborn, you won't play well with others, that's a problem. And lastly, if you're not faithful, that means when there's a disaster, you go, or when the going gets tough, you go, or you're not consistent, then you have a problem lah. Because that we require this kind of people in ministry. For me recently, what I've been trying to do with officers, and usually what I do in Club Koi is that I let the former OICs go and do their kind of thing, talk to them, right? And then we go through a list of people to talk to. They're always unlikely candidates, but sometimes unlikely candidates can also do an incredible job. After the OIC talks to them already, and the OIC says okay, then I will talk to them. So I'll be like the final gate. When I sit down and talk with them, one thing I'll challenge them to do is to go and pray about it. Like, and when I say pray about it, don't be like, oh, you're going to pray about it and then come back to me. I want to hear, I want you to ask God for green light. I want you to ask God for permission. Because as much as I believe that God directs people, I also believe that God also gives ministry as a gift to people, to grow them, for them to become deeper in Christ, and for them to enjoy relationships and friendships in ministry. So if you want to serve in this area, ask for green light, ask God. And then when they have got that green light, I will sit down with them and ask them a little bit more what that green light is. This is something new that we're doing. It's something that we used to do with respect to mission trips. So when I was a boy, what Mr. Ng would do is he would tell everyone on a mission trip, you don't come for a mission trip unless God gives you the green light. That's just a mission trip, no. It's just 7 to 14 days. This is way higher commitment. And so I don't think it is unreasonable for me to ask someone to really not just pray, like pray and like, oh, I didn't hear anything from God. So I think God is going
That's
on
it.
whatever I'm saying.
Yeah.
But to really hear from God and have a certain level of conviction. And that level of conviction is important because when the going gets tough, when they're dry, when they're weary, when the work is starting to eat into them, I can at least point to what they prayed, what their conviction was, and say that, hey, God has called you here, right? Or at least you wanted to be here and God has said yes, right? So if God has called you to be here, then God's ministry will not let God supply. So you can go because you have God's backing, you have God's blessing, and God is leading you. So I think that's very important as a basis. So it's not just getting the right people, but really bringing God into the picture, letting Him be the one to send.
I hope you all enjoyed that conversation. I mean, I hope that it was insightful in some way, or got you thinking a bit more. Yeah, and I just thank you for taking the time to be here as well. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode of the Extreme Exchange. Goodbye.
Bye.